Welcome back to VADA Live. I'm your host, Dan Kerrigan. Joining us today is Sam Dark. I really need to bring my A game because we have another podcaster on. It's gonna, Sam, I'm going to have to really bring it here. Just to make this introduction straightforward, Sam is Chief Operating Officer at Zeigler Auto Group. Also, you'll be able to see Sam at VADA 26 in Virginia Beach, June 22nd through the 25th. Sam brings decades, I hear north of 30 years experience across dealership ops, F&I, all of it, and just known for your conversations, podcasting media as well. Sam, really appreciate the time. Welcome to VADA Live.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. So I love being interviewed, too. I don't get interviewed much. I'm usually the one asking all the questions. So, Dan, if I end up taking over, I apologize.
No, please do, Sam. It's an interesting case study because for me, it's tough to switch and just go from interviewer to interviewee. Yeah. So, no, we'll get through this together, Sam, by all means. I love it. It's a conversation. Speaking of combos you've had, you brought Don Hall on, the dealer daily, the car dealership guy. From your perspective and speaking with Don, what's it like hearing from him, and how do you really find out, and what do you think about Virginia's dealer network through his eyes and how the association supports its members in that way?
You know, Don Hall is an absolute passionate advocate for the auto industry, and he is unapologetic in his views and his approach. And, you know, he clearly sees the benefit of this industry as a key economic indicator of health in the U.S. He wants it to win now and long term, and he is unapologetic in his lobbying and in his advancing the auto industry. I think the VADA has a huge benefit with him. I think there's some associations that collect dues and try to win a popularity contest. I don't think Don cares about the popularity contest. I think he has an opinion about the future of automotive, and I think automotive is well served by his opinion. And he is, marching forward full speed in pursuit of that better place. The FTC, the recent FTC letter is a great example of that, right? He took some fire by putting an aggressive post out on LinkedIn. It got attention of people who needed to see it. And, this industry kind of shapes around that type of a voice. So I think the VADA is blessed and fortunate to have a voice like Don on their side.
Where do you think Virginia fits within the dealer landscape nationally?
Ooh, that's interesting. Well, so I don't know all state associations. And, I have in my prior world, I worked for a Swiss-based insurance company and was able to work with a bunch of associations in that. And I think he's, one of the top in terms of just being a voice. Again, I think some associations get stuck in trying to be everything to everybody. And I think when you have a voice that is firm in their belief that the franchise system needs to survive, that dealers need to be given all the tools to succeed, that, competition needs to be fair, that direct to sales is probably not a good idea, whether it's Volkswagen, Honda, or whoever, and he has zero problems getting out into the public arena, even outside of Virginia, and advocating for those positions. That's got to put you guys in the top 1%. But but you probably already know that, Dan. You've got to know that, don't you?
It's here. I'm the interviewer this time, Sam.
Okay,
it does not surprise me. I'm sure everyone appreciates you saying so. I would have to put together a poll to see how many feel that way. But I hear that, and I think it brings smiles to a lot of Virginia dealers' faces, and amid the industry's evolving so quickly, which my insight to this world has been amazing through podcasting. Leads me to my next question, Sam. What do you think makes a good interview? I'm happy to share my take. I'd love to hear that from you.
So I love interviewing people who are intelligent, who've thought through an issue and have an opinion of their own about that issue, and then are willing to engage headlong into that, even if they could be wrong. Because I think one of the cool things about this medium is, even if you're not fully in on your own viewpoint, if you come at it and we have a great conversation, I can learn something. And it's the whole reason I do the Daily Dealer Live. I did the Zeigler podcast back in the very beginning. Is as CEO of this 41 rooftop group, I learn a ton by doing these shows and hearing ideas from other people. And not every interview is equal, right? There are some bright minds that come to the show and advocate their position. Don is one of them. We've had many others. And I end up learning, and the audience ends up learning. I think that's what makes, this art of podcasting and automotive. I mean, when I first went into this and said, hey, Aaron, I got a great idea. Let's do a podcast. Let's share what we're up to. I think there were people around him that were like, are you out of your ever-loving mind? Like automotive, a podcast talking transparently. And, to his credit, he's like, I see the benefit of let's have a conversation about the issues that are impacting automotive. Let's come to a better ground. Let's cast light into dark spots. And we're all better as a result. And that's proved out over these past 5 years, I guess, since we've had our internal podcast and the past year since we've been doing Daily Dealer Live. And it's been a heck of a lot of fun. So those are the best interviews, I guess. That was a long answer, Dan. You got to stop.
That was a great answer, Sam. And it actually reminded me, I think I need to come to these podcasts with a stronger point of view. I'm doing the host, I'm setting all the guests up, but I might as well lean into this stuff a little more.
Insert.
A question and then a story, interestingly enough. Are there any guests or conversations that really stick in your mind? And I often think of things where I'll go back to combos and say, oh, I learned something here. I took that, or that came in from somewhere. Any of those fun stories. And what I found interesting is of your interviews lately, Joey Logano was on there, which, believe it or not, was my first, I'll say, pro athlete big time interview at Pocono Raceway. And it was me, I was a videographer and a host of a local TV station running around the camera, and we said, who could be a really great interview? And it was back in, dating myself a lot, 2009 when we were doing this. And it was this amazing driver, Joey Logano, who was a really just awesome individual who took some time to speak with us. So anyway, conversation has stuck with you, and I know you've talked with Joey Logano recently.
Yeah, Joey Logano was a fun interview. He bought a car dealership through, I think it was an affiliation with Penske, if I remember right. And we wanted to have him on to understand, hey, are you really going to operate in this world? And, some people come into the interview from a studio. He had his iPhone in a park. And I'm like, oh, no, how's this interview going to go? We're not going to be able to hear each other. It ended up awesome. And, Joey drives a NASCAR. Zeigler sponsors a NASCAR, Carson Hocevar, who just recently took first Cup Series win at Talladega, which was a heck of a lot of fun. And he and Logano got into it during that race, and then also a recent race at Texas. So those are fun just because you get to hear a perspective of a driver and his view of the automotive business. And, for anybody that listens to that, you'll listen to it and you'll be like, there's parts where he really understands automotive, and then there's parts where he has no idea what he's talking about. And it's fun to kind of hear that and then try to make your own opinion about, how far does he want to get into automotive. So Logano was a fun one. Senator Moreno, I love Senator Bernie Moreno. His candor is refreshing. He also is an advocate for the auto industry. His approach on this FTC letter and how he says, hey, it's going to be a cleanup in aisle 9, 5% of bad dealers are going to be outed with this. I thought it was great what he said from his viewpoint, but then also the things that he got wrong in that interview. If you go back and listen to it, he said doc fee doesn't need to be disclosed as the total advertised price. The FTC ended up coming out and saying, no, it does. So it also kind of shows his willingness to come on a live show and pontificate. Also shows just how in flux our industry is and how much we know and how much is still kind of being figured out. I really liked, we had Grant Cardone on the show, and Grant Cardone is a self-promoter, bigger than life. He was just a fun interview. It was during a time when ICE was super aggressive in some states, and he talked about how in automotive we need to be more aggressive at capitalizing on current events, and he made a very inappropriate allusion to, car dealers should be having an export sale, as people are being deported, which that's his style. He loves to just shock people with saying crazy, insane things. I also love the VADA's own attorney, and I've got to remember her name, but she came on and talked a little bit about that FTC letter and just did an incredible interview there. We've had some really good, smart people. Yossi, the car dealership guy himself, being one of them. So, and Bill Nye, the science guy. You know what? I can't stop. There's too many to list them all. So,
and you had a full list just to round out the record, and Gambardella with VADA of the legal team.
Yes,
who is fantastic. And it's so working in the communication space. You had mentioned some speaking factually, you know, there's some things that could have been different there, or just going kind of to left field. How do you get people comfortable with doing that? Because I work in the PR space, so I hear that and I go, "Oh my gosh!" On a podcast, that seems to be a skill in itself, really.
Yeah, you know, we had one dealer that came on the show, and there were a couple of OEMs that were under fire for some of their business practices, particularly with stair-step and advertising covenants. And this dealer, who owns multiple dealerships, said, "Look, you know, part of my strategy is I know I'm going to break my ad covenants once a quarter." And he said, "I calculate it, I time it, I do it, and then they slap me on the wrist and I move on." And everyone just, like, it ended up being one of our best trending clips. It was a really good episode. He called me up after. He's like, "Dude, I got called into the factory headquarters and I got a beating by the OEM." And I'm like, "Do you regret coming on?" He's like, "Absolutely not." He said, "What I said was," and actually maybe I shouldn't say this, but he said he did not regret saying what he said because it was truth. He might have phrased it a little bit differently. So I try to be a good partner in these interviews by asking things in such a way that I'm not asking people to lose face, but I'm also giving them an opportunity to speak truth in a way that could help the industry. We recently had a huge conversation on the show around brokers. Brokering's a big deal in the East. Some states it's legal, other states it's not. It's gotten out of control in some states. And we actually had a couple dealers on that clarified the problem. And then we allowed brokers to come on and just speak their truth. And, you know, my own opinion of that particular show was that the brokers sort of outed themselves as really being kind of part of the problem in many ways, but dealers too. And shortly thereafter, those interviews, within 30, 45 days, many of the OEMs, Toyota, Nissan, I think Benz may have even, BMW came out and restated their positions against brokering and how if they find out, you know, it'll disqualify dealers for incentive payments. So, you know, how do we get people to talk so openly? You know, once you get going, it's tough to stop, especially if you can ask the question the right way. But also, I think it benefits the industry to get that out there and just deal with some of those big issues. And becoming a voice that advocates for the industry allows this platform to be that place. So I think more and more people want to come on to speak the truth, irregardless, you know, without regard for the consequence.
Appreciate that insight, Sam. It's a fascinating case study through and through, as you talked about transparent communications and people representing organizations, how that can make an impact when you are sharing authentically. Talking about your career, of course, spent operating at scale across the board. Wanted to ask you, where do you think dealers, or you mentioned evolving landscape, so where do you think dealers are getting it right today? Where do you think they're coming up short? What's top of mind for you?
So just generally in the automotive industry, where are we getting it right? Where are we getting it wrong? You know what? I think there's a huge rush to try to figure out how to reduce friction in the process. And I think recently there have been some great things. The broker thing is one. It kind of shows that people want an easier way. They're even willing to pay money for it. We had a guy, his name's Tony, on from Delivered. People pay him $1,000 just to not come into a car dealership. And I think some of the better, more thoughtful car dealers see that and they're like, wait, we've got to do better because we're going to lose these customers. The other stat that's interesting is, you know, this thing that while service revenue is increasing, defection away from car dealerships is also increasing. So we're just seeing inflation kind of padding the numbers. And I think thoughtful dealers are trying to figure out, all right, how do we utilize technology and AI and some of the other resources we have at our disposal today to create that frictionless experience, deliver value to the consumer, shorten the trade cycle, maybe even up a little bit, and win that customer long term. Where I think some are losing right now is I don't see, and Don Hall and I have talked about this a lot. So, you know, Chinese vehicles, there's a lot of people that want to ban them permanently and forever from the United States of America. Bernie Moreno's one, Don Hall is another big advocate. I get nervous at not being able to compete against a better product here in the United States. And so I'm nervous that at some point we turn around and the U.S. doesn't have the best cars on the road on our roads. And I think that's a problem here. I would love to see a way, that we can compete and that we can innovate so that we end up with the best product, so that we end up with something that economically is more palatable to a global economy. And I would love to see a day where one of our OEMs, and maybe it's even, Toyota, Honda, maybe it's an import per se, but still fully participatory in the U.S. automotive industry, beat the living crud out of Chinese auto manufacturers. And I don't think we're in that place right now. I think many would admit that there's been so much state-sponsored technology and funding that they sort of have a little bit of an advantage, and the trend line is not great. I think I would, I've shared this a couple times. I think it's almost like the Apollo moon landing of the 1950s and 60s. Kennedy got up and said, look, we got to go to the moon, and here's why. And the future of us depends on it. And it rallied an entire generation in the decade that ensued around that one goal. And our way of life, society, got so much from that effort, bringing people together from different backgrounds. The movie Hidden Figures, the guy taking down the sign above the restroom saying, look, we're all equal. We're going to get this goal accomplished together. I would love to see an auto manufacturer that had that kind of approach rather than, hey, protect me from them. Let's go beat the living daylights out of them, and let's do it on our own terms. Because we've been the best, and I want us to continue to be the best. So I think that's our big opportunity.
Where do dealers find that informed, we'll say, insight or line of, okay, there is a lot going on internationally. I'm relatively new to staying focused on the business. You could arguably say now more than ever, where I'm picturing a dealer in Virginia be thinking about these things. I know Don Hall's been clear on China and how just paying attention to issues is definitely front and center. Anything from your side as well, just how attuned to the news, everything from EVs now to gas prices and changes. Where's that line for you of being an informed dealer and then knowing when to take action with information or not?
Well, in automotive, and Don talks about this a lot, one of our shortcomings is we live on a 30-day cycle, right? Yeah. So he talks about how some of the problems of the past have been created by overly aggressive pay plans by GMs, and I like his thinking on this. In a 30-day cycle, people will do things that benefit the short rather than the long term. And, so there's the balance of we've got to return net at the end of the month, and then at the end, and 12 months make a year. And you've got to put together profitability during that cycle. But there's a lot to be said right now that, whether it's the Strait of Hormuz and some of the oil price challenges with gas going up, some of the geopolitical supply chain stuff, some of the China stuff, some of the direct-to-consumer stuff, like it makes sense for the ordinary average auto dealer to get a little more involved than maybe they were comfortable getting involved in the past. And Mike Stanton's a great advocate for that at the NADA level. They've got the things that they're working on and pursuing. We've got to defend the franchise model. We've got to, there's got to be some sort of a healthy balance with EV and gas engines as gas prices go up, and then there's got to be a bold vision by an automaker, I think, to compete on a global economy. It's possible, Dan, we've become a little too short term. And in my role, there's never been a great self-interested reason for us to jump out of our 30-day and 12-month cycle to get super involved in how are we going to compete with the Chinese, or how are we going to deal with this oil price problem. We're really good in automotive at dealing with the problems in front of us, overcoming them, and returning a profit. And maybe we need to take a little bit longer term view on that than we are right now. So,
and does that elevate your concern level, that inertia? That's quite the cultural shift to say, hey, 30-day cycle, we're doing this now. Yeah. Global affairs, we need to have a closer view on. Yeah,
I mean, I work. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge That's a huge shift. But think about it. Some of the most successful auto groups in the country have done that and succeeded with that. You could argue, a Carvana took a big risk and made it a lot about analytics and systems and processes and auctions. And, they're delivering a return to the marketplace that's extraordinary right now. And, it took a big risk, and it took them thinking longer term than, that 30-day cycle, that 12-month cycle, and they're winning. The Chinese absolutely have a very long-term economic plan, and they're executing on that. Maybe at the auto dealer level. And look, maybe it's involvement with the state associations and the national association and writing those letters and doing those things. But that's something. And that's something that not every dealership or dealer group is getting involved in today. So,
speaking of staying involved, Sam, you're going to be at the convention this year. We were talking travel plans before we even got on this guy. What are you looking forward to? VADA 26. Talk to me about that.
Well, so this is my first VADA because I'm a Michigan-based, Michigan, Illinois. So we're Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin. I'm coming as a guest of Don's, and I'm there in my role of Daily Dealer Live, bringing the perspective of everything we do there. So, I'm excited to learn more than anything else what there is to learn as part of the VADA. I understand there's a birthday celebration for Don, which that'll be a heck of a lot of fun. If that was a surprise, you can cut that out. And then I also understand we're going to celebrate the birth of the country, which nothing gets me more excited than the country and all of that. So I'm looking forward to it. And then maybe we can have some debates about topics that would be fun to debate. So to the point.
It's going to be a full event through and through this year. We appreciate you joining, Sam, and the commute to Virginia Beach from the Michigan area. Closing remarks, Sam, for dealers watching this right now. We hope everybody's registered for the convention. If not, do so. But outside of all that, what are you, maybe in your professional, we'll say your professional COO role, where's your mind? Where should other dealers' minds be at this moment?
So in this role, in my mind, some of the biggest, most important targets, North Stars right now, retention and service. So how do we retain that customer to our service department 100% of the time? The biggest tools for that right now are a video multi-point inspection and just creating that extraordinary experience in the service drive. So reducing friction where you can. And then second, parlays off of service, which the other big issue in our industry right now is how do you find that great used car? And used cars are hard to come by today. And so utilizing the service drive is great. A buy center. There have been some great people that have talked about buy centers on the show. Some people have even tasked their best salespeople, retasked them into going out and buying cars instead of selling cars. And they're able to provide a better return to the dealership by doing that. The state of the used car, the state of used cars right now is a little different because of COVID and some of the shortages we had there. And then I think it's even being made a little bit more of a challenge by some of the current things that are going on. And so, retention and service, used cars, and then leaning into what my favorite topic is, which is F&I. So how do we advocate for, deliver value in products that are intangible in a world where, some people skip steps in that. And when you do that, the customer's not well served because they're not well educated. So those are the three things I'd say, Dan. I'm
happy to finish on F&I, Sam. And I had a question in prepared for this. I feel like I'm talking about F&I a lot lately in these interviews. I'm thinking there's probably a reason that we're asking about this. But where are dealers leaving money on the table? What can they do? Actions that they can take now. I know it's sometimes you think about that home run thing. Are there little things that can add up? Where to start with F&I? Everyone could probably get better regardless of where they stand in the area right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Cars are older on the road than they've ever been. They're more expensive than they've ever been. Interest rates are higher than they've been in a generation. Payments are high. Insurance costs even are high. So every element of the car ownership points to customers want to protect themselves. And here's what I think, Dan. This is my own personal opinion. Unless you have a great process to educate the customer earlier about these intangible products, you're not going to win. Yeah. And some of the products that provide the greatest value to a consumer. Vehicle service contract protects against repairs, breakdowns of the vehicle. Most consumers, given the current economic state of things, they need it. They need it. It's like the Few Good Men. You need me on that wall, right? Like Jack Nicholson would have said. But I think there were a lot of bad habits that were picked up during COVID. And, some people forgot how to advocate for it, how to sell it, how to describe it, and processes that would help educate a consumer earlier on that. And, you cheat yourself, you cheat the consumer if you skip those steps. So I'm a huge advocate, Dan, for educating as much as you possibly can, as early as you can. Obviously, the menu and other tools, 100% of the product, 100% of the time, you've got to do that. And it comes down to, as well, doing a better job of pairing lending options back with the consumer, which also involves a conversation earlier, because these payments for a lot of consumers are a challenge. Affordability is probably one of the biggest challenges of our time. So I think F&I has been a huge opportunity for the past decade, and I think it will continue to be a monumental opportunity over the next 5 years. One that will belong to those that lean into training, educating the consumer earlier, and being fully transparent and advocating for them. Because when we're that, customers need this, they want it, and they'll accept it. So,
thank you for speaking the truth, Sam, because we can handle it here at VADA Live.
There you go. You can't handle the truth. I love
that's
it.
the only one. I was like, that's the only quote I can come up with from that movie. But hey, I'll go with it. Appreciate your time. You've been hearing from, you probably know already for sure, Sam Dark, Chief Operating Officer, Zeigler Auto Group, also from his podcast, Car Dealership Guy. Be sure to say hi, catch up with Sam at the VADA 26 convention. That's June 22nd to the 25th at the Marriott Virginia Beach Oceanfront. And we thank you for watching VADA Live. I'm your host, Dan Kerrigan. We'll see you next time.